The request for summary judgment that was made by the defendant in the matter of Zocano v. Ripple was authorized by the court. The request made by the defendant was, however, partially denied by the court. The court was presented with the subject for consideration as one of the consequences that has arisen as a direct result of this particular event. The case that was filed against Ripple has been referred to a magistrate judge in order to reach a settlement, with the intention of making the process of finding a solution to the problem easier. The Ripple case was transferred to the jurisdiction of a magistrate judge. A judge from the United States District Court for the District of Columbia made a request, and this action was carried out as a result of that request. Despite the fact that the Southern District of New York Court as a whole has come to the conclusion that XRP program sales do not satisfy the requirements for being classed as securities, the court made the decision to disregard this outcome. Directly as a consequence of this decision that was made, members of the XRP community engaged in a heated discussion on the matter. After receiving an order from Ripple XRP and CEO Brad Garlinghouse, Judge Phyllis Hamilton issued the order. Give it a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community before we begin. This will provide you with all the information you require regarding XRP. The case was brought against both of the parties in their respective capacities. By virtue of the order, it was determined that the federal claims as well as the class claims were qualified for immediate judgment. With regard to the defendants, the course of action that was adopted in the court of law was directed upon them. On the individual claims that were brought against the defendants in accordance with the statutes of California, the defendants have unfortunately been granted summary judgment. It was initially against them that these claims were filed. It was in this particular instance that these claims were brought against them. During the early phase of the investigation, these allegations were placed against them for the first time. Regarding the litigation that Ripple is currently facing against the Treasury Department, the XRP Army has begun to speculate on the impact that this ruling would have on the case. As a consequence of the decision that was just handed down, this conjecture is taking place. Regarding the status of XRP as not being a security, concerns have been raised as a result of the verdict, which asserts that it is not a security according to the ruling. As a result of this ruling, these concerns have been brought to light. As a result of this particular reason, this conclusion was reached after careful consideration. The likelihood that the Securities and Exchange Commission might appeal Judge Torres' summary finding on XRP by leveraging this California case in the Second Circuit is the most important danger that Ripple faces, according to Mark Fagel, a former attorney for the SEC. This is the risk that Ripple faces the most. 2. Put it simply, this is the most serious danger that Ripple is exposed to. Should something like this take place, Ripple would be put in the most precarious position possible. When it comes to the threats that Ripple is now facing, this is one of the most important ones. Should this scenario play out, Ripple would be put in the most precarious position that is ever remotely feasible. The conversation that is currently taking place between Ripple and the SEC is only going to become more heated in the future at this point. Regardless of whether or not it is found out that Ripple has violated the law, this is going to be the case regardless of their actions. Add to the state's district. The court for the Northern District of California recently dismissed numerous significant allegations that were contained in the legal action that was made against Ripple. These claims were included in the lawsuit that was filed against their company. A lawsuit was brought against the defendant as part of a class action lawsuit. The organization was able to achieve a procedural victory as a consequence of this, which was a significant factor in determining the outcome of the competition. His delight with the decision that was taken regarding the legitimacy of XRP was conveyed by Stuart Al-Jarati, who is currently serving as the chief legal officer of Ripple. Because of the verdict that was given down, this came about as a reaction. Over the course of their discussion on the subject of security, they will reach a crucial conclusion regarding whether or not XRP satisfies the requirements of the Howey test. This choice will be made while they are discussing the issue of security, which will take place at the period aforementioned. The verdict that the jury will reach with regard to this particular matter is going to be: Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse will be placed on trial in a civil securities action, according to a decision made by a judge in the state of California. It was the line that came before this one that made the decision. The most recent precedent that has been set in the jurisdiction served as the basis for the decision that was actually made. Garlinghouse is accused of making representations in 2017 that were deceptive with regard to the sales of XRP, according to the allegations that have been asserted in these proceedings. Garlinghouse is said to have uttered these statements, according to the allegations. Ripple has only had a very limited amount of success in New York, so this is a significant achievement in comparison to that. One of the key themes that will be addressed over the course of the trial is the question of whether or not the acts of Garlinghouse had an effect on the decisions that were made by investors. In the course of the trial, this will be the dominant focus of attention. According to the definitions that are established by the legislation, a trial is going to be undertaken to analyze the topic in order to determine whether or not XRP needs to be classified as a security. According to the findings that were uncovered in the Southern District of New York, the conclusion that Judge Torres arrived at and the result that Judge Hamilton arrived at do not support one another. In this particular instance, so it was determined that this outcome was reached after an intensive investigation was carried out. For the reason that it was made available for purchase by average investors, Judge Torres came to the conclusion that XRP did not meet the criteria for security at the time. Due to the fact that the damages were not extremely serious, this consequence occurred. Owing to the fact that the damages were not very severe, this conclusion was ultimately reached as a consequence of the situation. Because it did not satisfy all of the conditions of the Howey test, which was necessary for it to be successful, this was the reason why it was unsuccessful. The reason why it was unsuccessful was precisely because of this. During the course of the action that is now being heard in the state of California, legal expert Fred Rispoli responded to a question about the prospect of a settlement being reached by stating that there is a possibility that a settlement may be reached. There is a matter that is currently being contested, and the court in the state of California is currently hearing it. Both parties were given until July 8, 2024 to make a move that was limited to sealing particular exhibits, and it was decided that they were compelled to take into consideration their applications to seal portions of their pleadings. This was a requirement that was imposed by the ruling. This judgment was taken after it was determined that both sides were required to take action in order to resolve the situation. It has been determined that the verdict is definitive. During the process of arriving at this conclusion, we took into account the alternative that was shown to us. To the extent that these motions are connected to the case that has been presented before the court will immediately announce its final ruling as soon as that occurs. A number of individuals have voiced their concerns regarding the potential of either a catastrophic failure or a decisive triumph for the Securities and Exchange Commission as a result of the results of the Second Circuit, which took place in July of 2023 respectively. Announcing the results of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals took place in the month of July in the year 2023. In the matter of dealing with institutional investors, Judge Torres issued a rule that might be interpreted in a number of various ways, which resulted in dissenting opinions regarding the ruling concerning the case. She came to the realization that XRP tokens do not qualify as securities when they are made accessible to regular users. This was the conclusion that she arrived to. On the other hand, when they are sold to large investors, they are regarded to be in violation of the legislation that governs the way securities are purchased, each. And every one of the individuals engaged claims that they have attained a particular level of contentment and achievement in their lives thus far. Christina Lipman, who was formerly employed by this, has provided a number of points, one of which is the possibility that the Securities and Exchange Commission will not pursue the matter any further. This is due to the fact that over the course of the past few years, the boundaries of Bitcoin regulation have become increasingly confused. In the midst of Ripple's efforts to reduce prospective fines, which are anticipated to exceed $2 billion, this is the reason why this is the case. Reverberations there have been previous instances in which similar arguments have been dismissed by other court opinions. To give just one example, the most notable of them is the one that occurred in the Terraform Labs case. The cryptocurrency Ripple is presently contemplating a number of additional possibilities. The technique that has been applied in this particular instance is in sharp contrast to the strategy that has been adopted by several recent judicial decisions, which include the adoption of an alternate strategy. Jeremy Hogan has expressed his skepticism regarding the chances of the Securities and Exchange Commission achieving a significant victory in the continuing legal battle with Ripple.